trailer back in action. Simpsons near old Fraser. Such a good little trailer. Not too heavy. Plenty of room for all your gear. Get stuff up on top. Lots more room up there. Big 33s. Yeah, so it's ideal for this. Right, get a bit of footage, drive along with. Yeah, the most beautiful forest here, eh, with these trees, pines, and love to have a bit of a walk through the bush sometime. Anyway, the track's pretty good. A little bit harder to tow on a trailer, but there's no worries. We just been through the Simpson, and you know, tyres down to 18 on the back, 16 on the front, and about 20 on the trailer. So handling it pretty well. And I've heard that a mate of mine, Jason from Crazy Dog Canvas, is up here as well, so we're going to try and find him, maybe camp alongside him, we'll see. Rightio. Yeah, I just saw this through out the car window. Coming over this. Love this forest. It's probably in the 20s or 30s. This tree has been ring barked with an axe. Look at that. So we're going to chop it down. So they've started chopping it. But they decided to stop for some reason. Look at that. They've since busted off the top and fallen down. But that's a bit of history there. Look at the marks from the axe. These are all, this tree's rotten now. But look at that. These are axe marks from, could well be 100 years ago. Look, there's an axeman who's chopped into that. You can see where he's whacked his axe in there, probably to, you know, they wouldn't put their axe on the ground. It's so sharp, they were razor sharp, their axes, and he would have just sliced it in there. So while he's doing something, instead of putting it on the ground, but look at that. That's really cool. So this is all fallen in here, but he would have cut a little bit more out, and then with a double cross cut he would have come in from the back here and chopped them down, so that tree would have fell straight down here alongside the road. For some reason they decided to stop. Look at the size of it. I've been to the sequoias in America, Sequoia National Park, and also the redwoods, California, and they've got some gorgeous trees there. Some of the most beautiful trees on the planet in California. There's trees there that are over 2,000 years old. But this reminds me a little of that. These two here. Now those two beauties. I'm not sure what trees they are. Could be a tallow wood, or they're not pines. Just back over there, I saw it, I couldn't stop, but there was a big plantation of hoop pine, and beautiful forest of hoop pine. They're the trees that our plywood's made from. Look at these two beauties. They'd have to be several hundred years old at least. I'd say 400 or 500 years old. Not the wrong expert, but I don't think they'd be in the 1,000. But these would be here before Captain Cook landed. That's for sure. There was a lot of forestry, logging going on the island, and that's what they were after. Those beauties. So thankfully some of them were saved, or they didn't log the whole island, because those trees are invaluable. I love seeing big trees. You talk about conservationists, and I would class myself as a real greenie, although I'm also quite conservative. So funnily, the other day someone said to me, they said, "Look, you're a greenie." I said, "Yeah, I know." And they said, "But you're also a conservative." I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, you can't be that." I said, "What do you mean you can't be conservative and a greenie?" Of course you can. Most true conservatives are greenies. Well, most true greenies are conservatives. Anyway, but if it wasn't for a few greenies back in the day, they probably would have logged the whole of the sequoia forest. They probably would have killed the last whale. They probably would have logged the last of this forest. But there's probably somebody who said to the loggers, "You got to stop. You got to save some of these trees." And if they didn't, these would be gone. So somebody back then 100 years ago said, "We got enough, guys," And look at this. That is a ripper. Look at that fella, he's dead as well. Dead as a doornail. But you can see where these are all where they've ring barked it, because you can't cut through these trees unless you ring bark them first. So now we're going to ring bark that, and it looks like they were going to take out the V here and fall it that way. Let's have a look. No, he wouldn't have fallen that way. He'd have to fall back this way. So 4 L's when, I know. Yeah, he would have fallen straight towards me now. The 4 L's. Lay, which is basically where the tree's going to lay, which is, make sure there's no hang up, so that's okay down there. Lean, which is leaning that way. Yep. So he would have been aiming for right there. That's the lean, and that's also the lay. The 4 L's. Limbs is another one. Make sure there's no limbs that's gonna drop onto you. Any widow makers, so if I was chopping that down, I wouldn't be worried about any limbs. And what's the other one? Chris, my mate in America, told me this. The 4 L's. Lay, limb, lie, limbs, and another one. I always say l'escape, which is your escape route, which is out that way. The amazing thing about these trees too, like that is full, that's carbon, right? That's what, that tree doesn't come out of the ground, it comes out of the sky. Isn't that incredible? I used to wonder about that when I was a kid. How did all that come out of the ground? Wouldn't the ground sort of collapse? But this is carbon, basically, and that's come out of the atmosphere. So there's, of course, thousands of tons of carbon in the atmosphere above us, and through photosynthesis, the leaves suck that carbon out of the atmosphere and put it into a trunk, which is pretty incredible when you think about it, because you've got this enormous lump of carbon, but when a tree dies, it turns into this. You watch that, like it's so strong and rigid and solid, but once the tree rots, it just goes back to that. Back to soil. And that's what, this is the imperative for putting carbon into the soil, which is what's happening here. You can see it's already, probably some ants have got into that to speed up the process, but this is basically, this is what you want in your garden. That's why sawdust is good for your garden. That's exactly what you want in your garden. Look at that. Carbon. So if you dig up in this carbonised soil, this beautiful soil. Oh, look at that. Look at that little ripper. That is, look at that one there. So I think that's a hoop pine. Or a bunya pine. It's definitely a pine. So look at this little fella here. See that? Beautiful little tree. So I would say that that's a eucalypt, that one. Where these are a pine. Quite a few here too. Little one there. But I think that's a, geez, I hope I'm right. I think that's a hoop pine, eh? I would love to be right. It's either a bunya or a hoop pine, I reckon. But yeah, look at that little fella. But this soil here will go a bit, that's true soil. That's what soil should, it should have a smell to it. It should have an alive, let's get that, it should have a fresh, earthy, alive smell to the soil, and that's what you get in the forest. Yeah, this ground is littered with these little pines. That little shell. It's amazing what you can find when you scratch about. Oh yeah, look. Here we go. So these are the hoop pines. So I was right. That's another monster. Look at the size of that fella. Oh my god, what is that? That's an impressive tree. Now that's the same tree as the ones we saw before, as the ones up here. They were dead. And this one is fit as a fiddle. Wow, that's impressive. That is a monster there. The size of him. And sometimes the cyclones will knock the top out of that and break in half, and that's the end of them, and then they'll die. But that tree there is solid. I reckon if you cored that, it'd be solid right through. It's not a standard type of eucalypt, eh? I don't even think it is. It's not a eucalypt, because the eucalypts don't have a bark like that. I wish I knew what it was. And so we saw the little hoop pine. Here's a couple more here. Everywhere. And here's a little beauty here. Look at that. That's a hoop pine. And that's quite a nice little specimen there. Look at it. What's this one? It's another nice tree. Only one of those are going to survive. Probably the hoop pine. And look at that. Beautiful little tree. 2-3 years old. And anyway, here's here they are. So that is a hoop pine, and that's, I would say 100 years old, because I saw a sign back there that said planted in the 1920s and 30s. So 2019, look at that. Look at the bark on it. Now this is what our all of our Drifta plywood for the drawers and kitchens have always been a hoop pine. And that's what the sucker looks like. Beautiful tree. Now they'd be plantation, they actually come from Chile, over in South America. Australia doesn't, well, we've got a very, very small hoop pine industry in Australia. Austral around Brisbane, plantation pine, and they'd probably take trees about that size there. Well, not even that. You know, probably I'd say 60, 30, 40, 50 years old. But that sucker's 100. And see how there's no branches, there's almost no branches till right at the top. So, you know, any time where there's a branch, there's a knot. In case you didn't know that, hopefully you did. So that's why this pine is so good, because very few knots. Now if you milled up that and splice it or laminate it into ply, you'd have just a perfect sheet of ply. You could make marine ply out of that. So look, there's a nice little forest here of hoop pine, and they're growing quite well. And the good news is they're seeding quite nicely also, because there's a lot of little ones here. Here we are, another little fella, and just in the sand, I mean, it's all sand. They're pretty tough soil, but they're obviously thriving, and that little one's got a good chance. Look at the light coming through the leaves, the sunlight through the leaves. Look at this here. So there's a log has fallen here. You can see you've got a bit more growth here than anywhere else. There's moss, and that's because underneath here is basically a dead tree. So that's carbon mixed in with soil, with sand, and you can see it's got a little bit more life in there. And this little fella's growing right on top, so he'll be pretty happy, because he's got a fair bit of nutrients there to get going in, and that's the cycle of life. Pretty amazing, eh? Everything green on the planet. This, those, even the moss. The moss is amongst the most basic of a life form. But even that little fella there, everything you see that's green, every single thing you see that's green is producing photosynthesis, which is pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and bringing it down into this trunk and producing carbon. And you know, talk a lot about when carbon's in the news. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on about carbon. But I mean, carbon's here, right? That's carbon there. That's not in the atmosphere. In the atmosphere it's CO2, really. It's carbon dioxide. So there's no carbon in the atmosphere, it's carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And through photosynthesis, pulls that carbon in and releases the oxygen, O2. So there's a little thing to remember. There isn't carbon in the atmosphere, there's carbon dioxide. And these figures they put out, oh, you know, you fly a plane and you've just put out 2 tons of carbon. Seriously, I mean, those things, they're just all baloney, to be honest, I reckon. I mean, of course there's carbon dioxide, but you know, carbon dioxide, if you've got a greenhouse, right, they pump carbon dioxide in there because it makes things grow. Now, I'm not getting into the whole big debate about climate change, but you'll find that if there was carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it was there before. You know, if carbon dioxide is getting released, it's just getting redistributed back in the atmosphere now. It's quite a fast rate. But the carbon levels at the moment are nothing to what they used to be. Back with the dinosaurs around, carbon was 100 times higher in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. So they're all just panic merchants at the moment. And you know, again, we've got to look after our Earth, because it's all we got. And I'm very much an activist for that, you know. But this debate at the moment is mostly political nonsense, and it's not based on fact at all. I mean, the sea levels aren't rising, that's a fact. They're not. Sorry to say that, but they're not. And you know, the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere have been far higher in the past, and you know, I think there's every evidence to suggest now that the Earth's actually cooling anyway, so that's the fact as well. But you know, trees are key. Everything green, whether it's your lawn, plants in your garden, some basil, herbs, or everything green contributes to pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and releasing oxygen. And that's why we love trees. Anyway, we better move on. I could spend all day here in this forest. Righto guys, talk to you. I spotted another beauty. Oh my god, look at that. It's a monster. Absolute monster. Wow, look at that fella. That has got to be 500 years old. Size of him. That could be a brush box. Have a look. Oh, look at that, he's been half ring barked as well. Yeah. Some of these monsters, I mean, they are into it. Look at that. They had a go at him, but for some reason he decided that he's too big, or I don't know why. They've obviously stopped logging at some point, you know, because they don't start and then just stop for no reason. If they're not gonna halfway get into him and then decide, oh no, let's change our mind, they would stand here for an hour or more and decide first, because it's so much effort, and they've decided somehow they've down tools. There's a big bit of bark that come off. Look at that. Massive shed of bark. It's come off from up. Where'd it come off from? Stuff in there somewhere. Look at the vines. There's this vine here. Wow. If Kaido was here, he could shimmy up that. And you could probably, look at that. You could probably shimmy up that. Although, why would you want to? Lucky Kaido's not here, because he probably would try and do it, and then I'd be like thinking, geez mate, wish you wouldn't do that. Anyway, the monsters of Fraser Island, and there's one right there. Look at these vines. It's Crazy. Beautiful palms. Look at those vines heading up there. So, I mean, there would have been monsters all through here. This is not a tree on its own, you know, there would have been full of trees this size. But a lot of them got logged. Mate, tough guys back then. It's not like these limp-wristed pussies we got these days. Tough life, mate, eh? Tough men. Tough men back those days. And imagine getting a log like that out of the bush. You'd cut it down. When I was in America, I used to do a bit of logging there, crosscut saws, and it was just a tough job. Clearing tracks with crosscuts. When I was mule packing, we used to do it because in National Park you weren't allowed to use chainsaws. And you know, they would cut that up, cut it into lengths and drag it with bullock teams onto the road and then load it or skid it along. They'd have to load it onto some sort of wheels and then drag it to the coast and ship it away. Send it to Europe and they'd be making furniture out of it. A lot of it probably went back to England. Anyway, beautiful environment here, fresh air. And when you're talking about the environment, and you know, there's three things that really matter. And there's three things that should be talked about together rather than just carbon. I mean, the very first thing we need to survive is oxygen, and that's in our atmosphere. So the air we breathe and oxygen is the main thing, and we shouldn't be doing anything to pollute the atmosphere in terms of pollutants. And I'm not 100% convinced that carbon dioxide is a pollutant, because I mean, the more carbon in the atmosphere, the more carbon dioxide. Trees will they'll increase the growth rate and they'll suck it back down again, and that's, I mean, we're a closed system, we're a closed loop, you know, and what goes up comes down type thing. So, and then the other thing is water. I mean, there's no point talking about carbon dioxide unless you talk about the three things: oxygen, the water, and we shouldn't be doing anything that pollutes our water, because that's the second thing we need to survive on this planet. Not just us as humans, but everything. Animals, mammals, all species. And the third thing is the soil. We shouldn't be doing anything that pollutes the soil. Chemicals. We should be all organic. We should be all organic. And I'm a big believer in organic farming. And one thing I'm very, very passionate about, organic farming. But you know, if you hear anything on the news or whatever about global warming, they shouldn't be talking about just one thing. They should be talking about air, water and soil. If they're not talking about all those three things together, then they're not serious. And they're talking about it for political reasons rather than reality. So just remember that. Air, water and soil are the three things we need to be looking after. Nobody should be polluting any of those three. And unfortunately, the big polluters are not the West. It's the East. China and India, Southeast Asia, unfortunately, are the big polluters. And you know, trying to cut your carbon footprint in Sydney, New South Wales is just a political thing to you know, it's just nonsense. Anyway, think of that: air, water and soil. Nobody should be doing anything to pollute those, and we should be doing everything we can to protect them. Alright, I just wanted to show you that little monster. I can't say little monster. Just wanted to show you that monster, and we'll keep going. Here we are, heading down the beach. Fraser. It's pretty cool. It's not, what are we now? Start of September, Tuesday, so I can't even see anybody on the beach at the moment. few cars come past, but yeah, pretty lucky, not many people around, and it's pretty nice. Beautiful place, Fraser. First time I've towed a trailer. I've been here twice before, and first time I've towed a trailer on the beach. That's pretty cool. This dot's been to the Simpson and now to Fraser, and not long ago we took Richie's dot 7 up the Cape, so that's been cool. Ticking them off, eh? There's a big tide at the moment. You can see up on the beach. I mean, at high tide you literally can't drive the beach. So, but it's low. What time is it? I think it's low at 12:30. It's low now. And we'll have to keep an eye on the tides. There's Gabala. Yeah, big tides at the moment. Big highs and low lows. So, you know, at high tide you would not be able to drive up 75 Mile Beach, so I have to be careful of that. Keep an eye on the times. But we're going to go up to see if we can find Crazy up at Wynnum. I think it's called Wynnum. And we got a couple of days booked on, yeah, not sure, Zone 4 or something. Well, look at this. Back to 76 in. Got the trailer packed up. And put the tent over here. Put the awning up. Very quick setup. Just the awning. There's basically nobody here. Yeah, throw the Oz tent up, got the dump swag, awning, get some lunch going, and look at this. Sit here and watch the whales this afternoon. What do you reckon, babe?
Huh?
What do you think?
Nice.
Good?
Good spot.